Today, I fired up my computer to visit the comment section since it's been, I don't even remember when was the last time I did a round of replying to comments, but MSN is the first thing that I see. Interestingly enough, something caught my eye and I just cannot contain myself. I want to go over this so bad, so we're gonna do it. And the title of the article I saw on the homepage is 18 Habits You Probably Developed If You Were Not Loved as a Child. And the reason this is exciting for me is because, well, you guys know that I dwell a lot on childhood memories, but also I have had a pending topic called People Who Never Say They Love You. I didn't want to spoil that. I wanted to ideally have the topic out. That topic is still gonna happen, but now we're gonna have this one as well, since this one has a structure, whereas whenever I make a video, I'm just talking straight from my mind. I don't plan anything, so maybe this will be a better way of giving us an introduction to that topic, even though I know what I'll say when I get around to the People Who Never Say They Love You topic that I have pending. So let's dive into it. All children deserve unconditional love and care, but unfortunately, whether they intend to or not, some parents don't make their children feel as loved as they should. If you weren't shown enough love as a child, you're likely to recognize these 18 habits. And for those of you who may not know me long term, you all know that my dad was never in the picture and my mom has been in the picture and to this day still is. But of course, we had our ups and downs, differences and similarities. I'm excited to see what this thing has to say, because the more I explore my childhood, whatever bits of it I remember, to be honest with you, there's a lot that's kind of foggy now. I feel like it really helps me build myself as an adult a little better and just outright heal from some shit. All right, first one, seeking approval from others. For this, I'm going to read the description to let you know if I agree or disagree with it and how it's different with me. Those who do not receive the approval and validation they needed from their parents as kids are likely to seek these essential resources out from others in their teens and adulthood. If you find yourself struggling to make decisions without the reassurance of others and people pleasing to feel valued, it's likely your parents didn't show you as much love as you needed. This one, as soon as I saw it, before I said, I'm gonna read the descriptions, immediately I said, no, that's not me. Because everything that I do, I honestly do for myself. I really do not care what it signifies for other people. But I don't want for that to sound like I'm just completely existing in my mind, in my soul, and nothing else can take me or claim me in any way. I'm just saying that when it comes to how I am and what I do, I really don't need that validation type of thing. I will say, however, that at my job, if I'm ever taking on a role that normally doesn't correspond to me, such as what I had today, I do like to consult the individual who's my superior that, hey, I'm getting ready to do this, make this decision. What do you think? But sometimes I will, which I also did today, take ownership of a situation and make my own decisions, and I may be receiving advice that contradicts what I'm doing, but I may still stick to my plan because ultimately I got it started, I see where it's going, it has the potential of working out, why stop? That's something that happened to me at work, which was a lady needed help with a return. It involved accessing her account in a certain way. So I said, you know what? Let me see what it says. I took over. The lady, older lady, encouraged me to hold her phone if I had to. I did what I had to do. It took me a little while. It took me about 10 minutes. And my manager, he's not a micromanager nor a helicopter kind of manager, but I could tell that he was like more present around this situation because it was starting to get busy and I know that he needed my support in other places. But I told him, look, I know what it needs. It's not an AI. I'm actually chatting with a real person. Since I started it, let me just finish it because I was here present for the situation. I have already explained it. I know the context. Just let me finish it. Ultimately, it worked out, and he kept telling me that I did a very good job. But that's one of those instances in which if I hadn't gotten that far, I would have rather passed it off to somebody else and somebody else can do it. But it's not because I don't feel confident about me doing it. It's more about, this is not my place. This is not usually my job and my role. I don't think that I need to be the one cultivating this skill, given that it's not my place. I have the skill, but some people around me are newer. They could use the experience, because I've been doing this for 11 years, but some folks have only been doing this for a few months. I would rather they gather the experience. When it comes to people pleasing, you guys know that I have very arrogant and selfish and self-centered tendencies. I do that on purpose. When it comes to people pleasing, even the folks who I would regularly feel like I would please and I make a priority in my life, sometimes I dead ass don't please them. And I know that I'm not pleasing them. And it's not because I don't love them or don't value them or appreciate them, but it's a matter of me practicing having boundaries that in the past I didn't have. Had I heard this before, maybe some 12, 13, 14 years ago, I probably would have said that yes, I do care a little bit about having validation. But in the present, it's my validation that you're looking for. So yeah, that one, at some point it was true, but I can say that I have found my value in other ways. I'm the kind of person who, when I make decisions, I would rather make the decision, be wrong, and ask for forgiveness later, but I will still make it. I do not ever really second guess myself. If I ever second guess myself, it's usually when I'm collaborating with someone, because I know what I'll do. I know what I would do, but I don't know what you would do or what you want to do. Difficulty trusting people. Absolutely. An inability to trust is common among those who were emotionally neglected as children. People who weren't shown enough love as children commonly build up emotional walls to prevent themselves from getting hurt. They may be reluctant to open up to others or show their vulnerable sides for fear of being hurt or betrayed in the future. That is true. In my experience also, I developed a degree of, you could say, emotional high standards, to where my difficulty trusting people comes from, if I don't sense that you're compatible with me, or you don't remind me of me, or you just don't do something how I feel I would, then I'm less inclined to trust you. I know that's kind of weird to say, but my difficulty trusting people is, I absolutely detest when you fail me, especially on the notes of discretion. One of the things that I have hated the most that people do to me is whenever I tell them, hey, I gotta tell you something, don't tell anybody, and I tell you, I have only told you, and next thing I know, I happen to casually talk to someone and they bring up the thing that I remember I only told you, and they're asking about it. And I'm like, if I told you not to fucking tell anybody, why did you end up telling somebody? Because this somebody is now asking me about it. I never disclosed this to anybody else. You were the only choice to do this, and you know this person. I know that you were the one who said this. Why? Fucking why? After that happens, usually my trust in people is broken, and I probably will not ever trust you again, or maybe not to the same extent that I ever did. And I hate living like that. And the reason I'm like that is because when you tell me don't tell anyone anything, I am a tomb. I never share anything. So if you're not as good as I am on the note of trust, then I'm not interested in you and trusting you, and I just can't. You will never be able to cross the walls that I have put up, the boundaries. When it comes to setting up those walls, at some point I had to learn to break them down, because in the same manner that nothing bad was coming through those walls, nothing good was coming through those walls either. For me, the cost was, okay, put up the walls for everybody. I don't care. Neither good nor bad can get to me. And of course, that's not a healthy thing to do, but I would rather have that and be safe than having to deal with the frustration, which angered me in a very unique way, of people always failing me. So why even bother? Yes, I do tend to be reluctant to open up, and that's why there's some stuff that to this day I have never shared with a single human being, and I probably won't until you demonstrate that you can really fulfill my request, which is be discreet when I ask you to be discreet. Be someone who I deem worthy of trusting. It's not hard. And that's one of those instances that when I explain something like this, my thoughts and how I arrive at conclusions, people like to say that I'm very selfish and I just focus on me. And I'm like, you will never understand how I think and feel and operate if you're not interested in hearing from me. You like to deduce based on whatever psychology you may have read about or heard someone talk about, and maybe you'll make those connections to me. But whom better than me to talk about me, about how I feel and think? Why would you use a secondary or tertiary source to discuss me? It's just much easier to let me talk about it. But for some reason, people don't like it when you talk about yourself. People hang out with you so that they talk about themselves and what they have achieved and what they have, but they never really dig deep into their more sentimental areas. That's been my experience. Usually it takes something extreme, like a disaster, a death, for them to start thinking that way. Over-analyzing social interactions. Oh my God, when I was a teen, I used to do this a lot. And as an adult, I only do that depending on who you are and what you represent for me. And if you have a record of being someone who's not very clear with their intent and messages from the start, then I'll start peeling through the layers. When you feel a lack of love within yourself, you're more likely to be sensitive to criticism and rejection and worry about how others perceive you. Criticism doesn't bother me. You guys know it. That's why I have this channel completely open. But rejection is one that I can say I never really dealt very well with, especially if it's a rejection that's not deserved. An example of that would be, I'm a good performer on many things, but you still feel like rejecting me. Why not? You know, why are you not giving me the chance? And the only time a rejection frustrates me to that extent is if you're rejecting me because you're comparing me to someone else who maybe failed you, and you're putting me in the same category even though we're not the same people, and now I have to suffer the consequences of your mistrust because of someone else. How is that fair on me? Say, to give you an example, it's, let's say that for some reason you dated somebody who liked to divulge personal information that you didn't want to be let out, to kind of ride on the description of trust that I just expressed. Just because you were involved with someone who had the tendency of talking like that about you and disclosing things that you wanted to keep personal doesn't mean that I am the same as that person who failed you. So why are you grouping me in the same category as that person who failed you? You haven't given me the chance. You haven't entrusted me with anything yet. Why would you put me in the same box as this person? That's what I mean. That kind of rejection, me being rejected because you have a history with someone else that I guess you cannot get over and give me a fresh start, is the rejection that I resent. The way other people perceive me, it's kind of so-and-so. Depending on who you are, of course, I may bestow upon you the authority to criticize me in a way that can change me or can alter the course of my life. Overall, unless you really know me and really understand me and I can feel that, I will not care about how others perceive me. Because if there's something that I have learned about my life that I didn't realize until as recently as 2 years ago is I am one of the most misunderstood characters in this life. And I found that frustrating because as good as I am with words and expressing myself, I refused to believe that there was still room for confusion. I don't try to be difficult or convoluted. I say things the way they are. But maybe people with a real problem of overanalyzing social situations were overanalyzing me, but just not in the right direction. And that's why, like I said moments ago, even if it sounds arrogant for me to just talk about me a lot, it is important for me to be able to describe my own feelings and thoughts, and for you to hear it coming from me. As a result, you may find yourself ruminating on past interactions or conversations and perceive neutral or ambiguous interactions more negatively than they really are. And I did have those tendencies, and those tendencies were primarily felt in my interactions that involved people who I already had a rift going on with, say managers who were difficult or other people with strong characters. Because, you know, my character is strong, but I'm just more quiet about it. Suppressing emotions. This one is another so-and-so. Kids who are not loved enough often learn to hide or suppress their feelings to avoid vulnerability and being hurt. As adults, they may also find it challenging to identify and express their emotions, fearing that if they do, they may be ridiculed or ignored. I don't care about being ridiculed, but if it's in my personal, intimate setting, yes, and I do not tolerate it. But when it comes to suppressing emotions, the only time I suppress is when it's dealing with people who are not important in my personal social circle. If you say something dumb and it frustrates me, I'm not going to let you see it. I'm going to pretend that, you know, I'm cool, I'm fine with it, and you'll think that you got away with it, but I'm already messing with you in my mind, but you don't have to find out that that's how I feel. And that's why I very often say that I don't like to entertain people. When it comes to suppressing my feelings, if you don't matter, I will suppress them. If you matter, I will show them. Because if I'm exultant about your presence in my life, then you getting to see emotions from me, being entertained by me in any way, is a massive privilege. As a result, that's why I reserve it for a handful of people. But if you see me not really showing feelings or sharing them very often, like you really have to dig in to find out about me, then you know that you're not it. If you don't have to work at all to get me to talk to the fullest extent, you're good. You're in a very good standing with me. You're part of my intimate squad, if you will. But if you're someone who just doesn't get me to break or express myself any deeper than you're hoping, then you're not it. And I do that on purpose because of this. Because sure, getting hurt sucks, and I know that that is my weakness. And because I know that I'm susceptible to those feelings, I have to protect myself. And that's why I cannot just have the door open for everybody. Hopefully that makes sense as well. But I never not do that out of fear of being ridiculed, because I don't care about the majority of people. But if it's in my personal social circle, then that's a territory that you gotta tread a little more carefully in. Fear of abandonment. This one is 1000% true, and I hate it. Children who were not shown enough care and affection often end up feeling abandoned. I have always felt that way. Because of this, they're more likely to fear re-experiencing this same sense of abandonment when they grow up. If you find yourself becoming overly jealous and worried about friends or loved ones leaving you, it could stem from a lack of love in your childhood. Interestingly enough, the closer friends that have left me over the years, I never really felt immense pain that it was over, because my lost best friend, sure, she left me and whatever because she got easily offended by the opinions that I was beginning to have. I said, I gotta treat you like my grandfather's passing. When he passed, I dwelt on it maybe for a week, But after that, I learned to let go. When my best friend did that to me, that's when I discovered that I really, really, really had honed that skill. The skill of, okay, it's over. This chapter, us being together, is over. All right, you're done. So long. Goodbye. I'm letting you go. I analyzed it for as long as I needed to. I journaled about it. I wrote about it to kind of document the experience. And I said to myself sincerely, okay, I understand how she felt. I'm glad that she said something, but it is very evident that we are no longer good for one another. She made the decision to leave. I'm not gonna stop her. When it comes to feeling overly jealous or worried about friends or loved ones leaving me, the only time I experience jealousy is when I feel neglect. And to best describe what I mean by neglect is if our interactions become routinary and I don't see you being curious about me. Because why would we hang out if I gotta sit there listening to you talk about things and people that I'm not a part of and who are not a part of me? I'm not interested in that. At what point will I get to have a part? When will I have my time to be explored? You mean to tell me you're not curious about anything about me at all? And I know that it's been a while since you heard about me or from me, because I know how long I have gone without telling you something about me for. When I hang out with someone, I like for the attention to be mutual. You tell me about you, about yourself, in the same manner that I expect to have a turn at being the main character for however many minutes I need. And most importantly, I like for you to actually do what I do out of respect and esteem, which is remember what I fucking tell you. You don't have to be perfect about it, but if you're leading a social life in which you cannot even keep up with my details, and remember being involved in my personal life is a privilege on its own, I start noticing that I'm superficial to you, and I don't have time for that. I would rather just be by myself and wait until the right person to talk to comes along than being with someone, hanging out with someone who simply does not fulfill me. I like to feel good after an interaction, not feeling like, okay, shit, I'm still just as lonely as before or even worse because I had to listen to this person talk about things and people I'm not a part of. That doesn't feel great. And yeah, for me, the fear of abandonment also has to do with, if I have invested in you, I like to feel like we're building towards something. But for me to discover that that was a waste of effort and time, it reminds me of my dad being absent in my life all over. And that is my greatest source of anger, rage, and resentment. Don't play with me. Perfectionism. 187,000% right. While perfectionism alone doesn't necessarily indicate a lack of love in one's childhood, it can when we strive for perfection to garner more love or approval from others. This may also come with a tendency to procrastinate due to a fear of failure or not meeting high enough standards. Exactly. There are some projects that I have postponed because I don't feel like I have the proper technique to deal with it yet, and I want to be able to get it right on my first shot. But my perfectionism also stems from, I guess it ties in with the approval part, but for me, my biggest fear was bringing home a grade that was below 100%, or at the very least below an A, because that's what was expected of me. And if I brought anything less than that, anything lower than that, I know I was going to get in trouble. Unfortunately, your achievements are not as celebrated when they are expected. Whereas if I can be expected to bring those scores, that prestige, but all of a sudden I'm not delivering on that, then for some reason you do feel inclined to call me out on not delivering the perfect score anymore. It's like, okay, you scored perfectly. Okay. But, oh, you scored poorly. you must have fucked up. You must have done something wrong. That dynamic is just very unhealthy. And I get that with some parents, it's you don't want to look like your child is underperforming because they're not being invested in, they're not being exercised intellectually or whatever. But I also think it's not fair to place that burden on us. And then the procrastination, it's something that as an adult I'm definitely dealing with, because for instance, I'm supposed to be listing some clothes. I'm supposed to be clearing out my room of some trash, genuine trash. There's some stuff that I want to transfer from one object to another to make it usable. Still haven't done it. There are some favors that people have asked me for that I still haven't even gotten around to, and I'm not proud of that. In addition to the comment section. The comment section is probably the greatest example of procrastination that I can share with you guys, that you guys may experience. You leave your comments. I go weeks without addressing them because unfortunately, this is not my priority. This is not my number one thing. And notifications are all disabled on my phone except for text ones. And even those are silent unless you have the emergency bypass. But it's because I know how to focus on the things that absolutely non-negotiably must be addressed. But something that isn't necessary, something that's optional, that can be postponed. So unfortunately, don't be offended, you guys. You guys definitely bring goodness to my day, but some of you guys I just have to push to the back burner. And it's not because as human beings, I don't care about you, but understand that in my life, you have a ranking. I just cannot put you higher than you can realistically exist before you start to affect me in a negative way. I cannot exist in the internet, in the meta, or say socially depend on, for example, the YouTube comment section, because if I invest my time on that, that is time that is not being invested elsewhere in my life, addressing the things that do need to be addressed. I still have to eat, I still gotta shower, I still gotta exercise, I still gotta go to work, I still gotta try to sleep. I got a cat to take care of. I have a mom to help in some ways too. Unfortunately, nothing else can top that. So that's what I mean by that. That's where my perfectionism comes in. I have a structure, nothing can disrupt it. Nothing. I'm that way because that's what ensures my success. Difficulty expressing needs. Unloving parents frequently dismiss or ignore the needs of their children. As a result, people raised in this way may struggle to express their needs in the future, afraid they will be ignored or invalidated for their desires. That is true. But even more painfully true is if when you express your needs, there has been a tendency of your needs being rejected. If I express my need for a day off and people say, lol, a day off, why? And I'm like, whoa, because reasons? And you just spend so much energy and time and effort convincing me that I'm not deserving of the day off. It's like, no. I have the need. It shouldn't matter. I have desires that I wish to have fulfilled and I need you for that, but you're just outright continuously pushing me away or not giving me any kind of consideration. I will be upset. At some point, it will get bad enough to where I'm never going to consider bothering sharing any of that with you. And of course, that will lead to my boundaries continuing to grow. When I have difficulty expressing my needs, it's usually because we have a record of experiences being bad between us when it comes to that. And I would rather just not suppress it. I would rather be like, okay, I know how this person's gonna react anyway, so why bother? And I don't like being that way because I'm not an insecure person. Self-isolation. You guys know it. I describe myself as someone who's antisocial. Honestly, it's because social situations really do stress me out that bad. It is common for those who did not receive enough love as children to feel alone and isolated in their personal lives and the world at large. They will sometimes self-sabotage and withdraw from others to cope with their difficult emotions or fear of rejection. Definitely, I can say that I did experience that, coping with my difficult emotions, and I just need to be in a place that's quiet, sometimes dark, no noise, no light, no sound, and I just gotta be by myself to just heal and make myself feel worthy of being out in society again. And most of the time that just doesn't come very often for me. My fear of rejection is primarily that feeling of being compared to something else, to someone else. Like, who out there has actually taken the time of getting to know me and find out about me to determine whether or not I'm too toxic to exist in your life. And that's why when I'm here on the channel, I really like that I express myself in the way that I do, because not only does this serve as practice for me to let it out, but I'm happy to see that I'm willing to share any of this at all. I went years not telling anybody anything. To see my progress at feeling comfortable with a bunch of strangers, I think it's a very good start. Especially if I'm sharing things that once hurt me and now I'm able to be more open about it. It's a very liberating feeling. Chronic guilt. Oh my goodness, I remember a time, I think it was a year, 2 years ago, in which I tweeted out something like, I feel so much guilt. But it was something that I felt guilty about just everything in my life. And today I had an experience with guilt, which was our shift started to get a little rough because we were missing somebody who had to take time off. And I was selected to help supplement that role. And there was some stuff that I just dead ass did not do, did not catch on time. And that led to a snowball of issues. And the very things that I sit here and criticize others for sometimes about inaction, I observed how my inaction in an area that I really don't usually monitor contributed to a difficulty during the shift. And basically what was happening is, since I was running customer service, I was expected to also monitor at what time people's breaks were. But that's not a thing that I do. That's never been a thing that I have been actively coached on or trained on or even told to monitor. But today, it was one of those times in which that was necessary. And this is probably the third time this happens, to where I just completely miss that window when people's breaks are due, because again, I'm not someone who usually performs the role of monitoring that stuff. And I do not know that you need that from me today if you don't tell me. I felt guilty from the sense of, dang, it did not occur to me to keep an eye out for that type of thing, because I'm used to operating on autopilot, and autopilot that's not something I ever had to worry about. So why would today be different? Especially if I haven't been told that it will be different. That's one of those things where, to tie it with the earlier point about I would rather just act and ask for forgiveness later, I genuinely felt bad that I under-delivered in that area. But I also indicated, hey, in the future, what I needed was a little bit of orientation on what you actually need from me today specifically, versus how this role regularly looks for me under different circumstances. Parents who do not express enough love sometimes send their children the implicit message that they are to blame for their needs not being met. As a result, kids raised in this way will often carry unnecessary guilt, even for things that were clearly not their fault. And when it comes to my parents, the one thing I always felt guilty about is that I happened to be born right as a divorce was pretty much being determined whether it would actually move forth or whether a reconciliation would happen. So my arrival being at a time in which it actually seemed to align with the timing of a divorce being expedited, it doesn't feel great. I didn't start feeling that way until I began to ask questions and put the pieces together and be like, okay, the only reason I exist is because I was an attempt at reconciliation. But by the time that I got here, that shit just wasn't happening. I came so close to existing outside of what a marriage is supposed to be. And I never got to experience my parents being together. That shit just forever made me believe that that shit was my fault, even though I didn't grow up thinking and feeling that way. But when I started to critically think about it and objectively, you know what? Yeah, maybe my arrival, even though in a sense it was a blessing because it helped one of them decide that, hey, this shit is definitely not gonna work. I also feel like, well, maybe without me, the outcome would have still been the same, but maybe a little later. I don't know, quite frankly. I do tend to feel guilty about the littlest of things too. I'll never forget being in elementary school, we had a field day and we were having hot dogs and burgers and things like that. I remember seeing a bottle of mustard left behind, and I saw it and I wanted to turn around and go get it because it was around that time that I was learning about not wasting food and all that, and I felt so bad about the fact that I didn't have the guts to go back and get it. And then I felt guilt that, oh my God, somebody could have probably benefited from that stupid mustard, but now it's gonna go to waste because I left it out in the sun for too long. Something like that. The littlest of things I was always feeling guilty about. Escapism. If you commonly find yourself fantasizing, daydreaming, or attempting to escape your thoughts and feelings using movies or series, this could be a sign of a neglectful childhood. I don't do that a lot with movies or series, nor music, but in my own mind, I do tend to create alternative conclusions, alternative thoughts. And I used to think that it was just an exercise in my brain, something I was very good at. But now reading this type of thing, now I can tell what the source of that inspiration came from. Children who were not attended to enough often develop this habit as a way to cope with and escape from their reality. And honestly, it's not like I really want to escape my reality like so bad, like, oh my God, my life is just the absolute worst. Sometimes I just want to escape the thoughts that I simply cannot help. There are a lot of thoughts that are very critical, and to a degree, some of them may be a little prophecy, like some things that I can just see unfolding and see the future foretell and be accurate. And I'm like, sometimes I wish I didn't have the power of being able to escape into my thoughts and break things down so well that living with that is a burden. Sometimes I wish I could just be carefree and aloof like everybody else and then get hit with the tragedy, not seeing it coming. Because sometimes when you see it coming, it's like, shit, that predetermines my state before it's even here. But that has me confused because sometimes I'm like, is that a gift that I have because of my religious beliefs, or is it a curse, such as the way this describes it? It's kind of hard. And in a sense, that's why I like to make videos and ramble about it, because maybe one of you guys is going to tell me the thing that I need to hear to make peace with it or accept certain things. Sarcasm as a defense mechanism. Oh man, I used to be such a savage, sarcastic queen, but I learned to turn it down a little bit. Enjoying sarcasm obviously doesn't guarantee that your parents didn't love you. However, if you find yourself using humor and sarcasm as a defense mechanism to protect your vulnerable side, this could be an indicator that you don't feel safe enough to openly express your feelings and needs to others. Overcompensating in relationships. Oh my goodness. Yes. People who did not receive enough love as children are more likely to overcompensate in their adult relationships and friendships, attempting to prove their worth and lovability so that those around them don't leave or view them negatively. And I hate that about me, because I have definitely in the past put so much effort and given so much of myself, of my time, of my resources, my effort, my tears, my affection, everything, only for someone to just be indifferent about it. I hate that. HATE, all caps. Hate it. But at the same time, it feels like the right thing for me to do. So it's like, I don't really want to stop that, because maybe the person who can really take that and appreciate it is going to come along. And in the same manner that I resent the people who reject me because of a bad experience they had, I don't want to turn into the person who does that to them. And I'm the kind of person who I like to give my 100%. I'm not going to commit to something or to someone just 25%, 50%, 75%. No, it's 100. In the same manner that I expect 100 from you. Avoiding eye contact. Feelings of shame and unworthiness are sadly common among those who did not get the love they deserved as children. This can create a barrier to intimacy that can result in the individual attempting to avoid eye contact to protect themselves and their vulnerable side. I actually don't have problems with eye contact, quite the opposite. Now, I will say, I'm not sure if I ever made a video about this. I want to say I did, but if I'm angry, upset, or just sharing a negative emotion, I don't like to look a person in the eye, because I don't want for that person to feel or think that my rage is directed at them. But today, however, I do notice that I will give my absolute eye contact to, of course, customers. But if I'm multitasking and I know you relatively well, I don't feel compelled to hold eye contact. But if you're one of my favorite people in the world, extremely important to me, I try my darndest to always look you in the eye, because looking at you in the eye brings me a lot of comfort. When I'm mad, if you are that person, my favorite person, I will still not look you in the eye, because I don't want you to think that, again, I'm frustrated at you. I don't want to give you the memory of me being mad, looking mad at you. And the reason I do that is because when I was a kid, I remember adults around me being pissed off, and they would look at me and those eyes were full of rage and anger. And even if maybe they were venting to me as a kid for some reason, I never forgot that look in their face. And I always associated it as, oh my God, this person is letting all that anger out on me. I must be the one at fault. It's one of those things that as a kid, I wasn't oriented that when someone is spitting out anger like that, I'm not necessarily the source. I always associated angry people around me equals they are mad at me. But now as an adult, I like to make eye contact if it's something that's very important to me or intimate to me, or if you are sharing something that's very sensitive and important and hurtful, such as, say, you're discussing the death of a loved one. Maybe you're not looking at me in the eye, but I am looking at you in the eye. Hopefully that makes sense. In a sense, me experiencing those things in my childhood taught me how to protect others potentially from that kind of experience without even knowing it. So today, for instance, I had a moment at work in which I genuinely got mad at a coworker, and I was telling someone about it. The person I got mad at is one of those people who I just don't do well with anyway. This person is a great person, is a nice person, is a sweet person, but they suck as workers. They don't listen to advice, they are aloof, they don't pay attention, they just don't work well. Someone like me, the perfectionist, overachiever, good performer, etc., two complete polar opposites together. And I have a tendency of getting frustrated easily because I know how to rectify that. I want to fix that the ZAM way, which is physically take action to beat sense into you. That's how I learned some shit. But of course, as an adult, you can do that because, oh my God, why are you dialing the police? Don't do that. The way that I learned things had to involve trauma, physical, mental, emotional. That is the way that I know how to teach when an incident arises that resembles those past times in my life. I resort to someone I trust and love and am tight with to make myself vulnerable, express the frustration I'm expressing, and I know that person has the tools on their hands to calm me down, to drown out my flame by tossing water on it. Obsessive self-reliance. No one is better than me. As kids, we are naturally dependent on the adults around us to cater to our wants and needs. But if our parents weren't present enough to fulfill this essential role, we are likely to become excessively self-reliant, believing that if we don't take care of ourselves, no one else will. And I said that recently on one of my videos in which I said, hey, as a woman, life can suck. You don't feel 100% all the time because shit, you are living in a time in your life in which you have to be able to take care of yourself, and of course no one else is there and you may need it, and sucks to be you. Either you take care of yourself or no one else will because you're not a little kid anymore. That, but also I tend to be the kind of person who, even if I'm supposed to delegate a task to someone else, no matter how simple it is, how difficult it is, how medium range it is, I'm always having the attitude of I better do it myself because I don't trust anyone else to do it right. And I hate that. I am trying to give others an opportunity because others can do good jobs, good things. But if you haven't pre-proven that to me, I don't want to bother. Hypervigilance. A little bit not. When we grow up in households that feel unsafe and unloving, we often become hypervigilant to scan for potential threats to our well-being. This habit can also follow us into adulthood, causing us to live in a heightened state of anxiety and alertness. I'm definitely anxious, I'm definitely alert, but this one, my hypervigilance tends to revolve more around threats to our well-being. My well-being primarily is my emotional one and of course my physical one. Usually when I'm scanning for threats, I'm looking for behavior that resembles something that put me at risk once before. I'm doing that with everybody. I may be also doing that around the people who matter to me. For instance, if there is someone at customer service wilding up at one of my squad members, I'm like, I'm gonna keep an eye out because I want to make sure that everything is okay. This one, my hypervigilance is not necessarily revolving around jealousy or that type of insecurity. I know hypervigilant people who observe someone talking too much to someone else and they immediately start questioning, what could they be talking about? Why are they taking so long? Why this and that? That over-analyzing conversations, I don't do that. But what I can say I do is I do scan for threats. And it's because I am aware of my vulnerable state. If I can identify a threat and mitigate it as soon as possible, that's what makes me feel well. I also think that as an adult is part of the sense of responsibility that you ought to have anyway. It really depends on how you look at that one. Dismissing personal achievements. Oh my God, yes, I never think that anything I have achieved is impressive. And one of you guys once told me something like, it is amazing and impressive that you do this the way that you do it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? There is nothing impressive about what I'm doing. And I don't know why I do that. I had the toughest time accepting compliments, but once I read something that changed my life, which is the only answer you need to give to a compliment is thank you, my life just changed. Those who do not receive enough love in their childhood are more likely to dismiss or downplay their own achievements or successes. This is usually due to the fact that they do not have a strong sense of self-worth or self-esteem, so they struggle with acknowledging the positive qualities and skills within themselves. Finally, self-esteem is mentioned. When I was a kid, I thought my self-esteem was like, average. When I was a teen, I thought it was high. But after completing my teenage years, I don't know what the fuck happened to me, but it began to decline and just decline. And I became aware of my low self-esteem when I just routinely, very often, just freaking cried myself every night to sleep, or cried myself awake because I couldn't sleep. And I just cannot tell you what it was, because I could always be the top performer. I could be earning all of the awards. I could be showered with all kinds of celebratory things. But in my mind, I always felt like none of that was just real. None of that was just true. So they struggle with acknowledging the positive qualities and skills within themselves. And because at some point, I used to just focus on the fact that, damn, I'm miserable, I'm bitter, and all I have is, I guess, arrogant and selfish tendencies. I had to put a lot of effort into actually seeing the positive qualities and skills that I have, even though they're obvious. Being generous, being kind, being polite, being on time, being reliable, being non-problematic and integral at my job. I actually had to critically think about those as positive traits, because it became something that I just felt wasn't really, I guess, valued enough. I don't know how to explain it, because it feels like I'm contradicting myself. Like, okay, I can be showered with awards, but I felt like the recognitions I was being showered for were not the things I wanted to be recognized for. I wanted to be recognized for being the good daughter, the good girlfriend. Those things that resonate more with my intimate life. But I was hearing none of that. But those people were telling me, I may not tell you that I love you, but I show you. And I'm like, you gotta learn to be comfortable at using words to describe that what you're doing is a loving gesture. Why is it hard? Preferring fictional or remote relationships? Not at all. I'm craving a real relationship. Do fictional or online relationships feel safer and more comfortable to you? If so, you may want to consider whether this preference could be rooted in your childhood. People raised by unloving parents are more fearful of exposing their vulnerable emotions in real-world settings. So fictional or online relationships can feel more controlled and safer to engage in. I'm not going to deny having felt attraction toward fictional characters, but it's not like, oh my God, this is the only fictional being who can bring me satisfaction mentally or emotionally. Nothing like that. Online relationships, I really cannot say that I have experienced them in a functional way, in an established, structured way, because I don't allow it. I'm like, if I cannot see your face, if you're not here, I'm not interested in you, period. It just cannot happen, because online relationships feel like a lie. We're not building toward anything that you can observe. And that's why I don't prefer them. I don't want to even give them a chance. Online relationships did not exist in olden times, so anything that didn't exist, I tend to not gravitate toward, with the exception of certain tools, such as, well, no shit, I have to depend on a computer now, I have to depend on a car now. Those things I cannot escape. But when it comes to the stuff that you cannot really touch or feel or smell or sense, but it's a thing still, I don't play with that. I gotta feel it. I gotta see it. I gotta be able to feel it as real. But me relying on a screen, on a phone, something like that, I just can't. I wish I could spend less time using this thing and being out there more. Did my mouse die? Haha, my mouse died. It's about time it died, because it's been months. And so anyways, Yeah, I can't do fictional relationships because, again, as an over analytical, critical person, I just see right through the lie, and that deepens my depression. Fear of making mistakes, absolutely. Those who did not receive enough love in their childhood may develop a sense that they are failures and disappointments if they do not prove their worth through achievements and success. As a result, they are likely to have a fear of making mistakes and failing. In a sense, that's one of the things that makes me discouraged to want to move up in things, because I already can tell that moving into a role with more responsibilities is going to make me miserable. I know it's going to be a mistake, and I would rather not make the mistake. Even if it were to surprise me and holy shit, I discovered that this is actually the best thing ever, I'm missing out, I hate that I didn't do this sooner. But what if it's a mistake? And once again, I'm very rarely wrong about things like that because I know myself well. So imagine me making a mistake in that regard, a preventable one too. And that seems to be it. It looks like I am done with the topic now. Yes, cool. Well, that's it from me, you guys. This took way longer than I thought. I'm clocked in at 1 hour and 3 minutes now. So I'm gonna have a blast editing this. But hopefully you guys learned something about me, something about yourselves. And if you're comfortable doing this, if you are part of the squad who was abandoned by a parent, or you had one of your parents absent from the picture, describe it to me, share it, and let me know how you learned it affected you and how you got over it, or what things you're still struggling with. The floor is open. All right, I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.